I am with the legendary Kay Griggs, the woman who introduced a lot of us to this line of work, if you will. She's alive and well. We're going to choose not to film her or photograph her for her safety, but I wanted to at least record her voice in our conversation because I want people to know that she is alive and well. They didn't win. They didn't hurt her. It's a happy ending. And she's 79 years young. She's an amazing woman in every way. How are you, dear Kay?
I'm just fine, thank you. It was so nice of you to make the effort and come and see me. And I just, it's delightful. You're a wonderful young person. And I really enjoyed chatting with you. And thank you.
Thank you. So I won't make this maybe just 10 minutes or so. Just a couple questions that I don't want to rehash the things that you've asked because you did a great interview with Jeff Rentz. I've not heard much from Jeff Rentz. Did you keep in contact with him at all?
No. He just called, and it was a nice interview.
What about Pastor Strawcutter?
I've talked to him a couple of times, but it's been a good while.
Okay.
He's a wonderful person, and he interviewed a Virginian friend of mine, John Lewis, who grew up with our family, and Meriwether Lewis's son, John Lewis, who's passed away. He was a good friend of my brother Bill's, but he actually interviewed him.
And let's see who. George is still alive.
Yes,
okay.
he is.
Is he older or younger than you?
Older.
Older.
Yeah.
Do we know where his whereabouts are?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You saw him. I remember you told Jeff Rentz you saw him in 2001 at some occasion. Was it a wedding or when did you?
I'm trying to remember the last time I saw him, but really he's happy, and I'm happy, and I'm happy that he's happy, and he's doing well.
Okay.
He's doing well. That
Good.
Makes me happy.
That's all we can hope, people. There's a couple things, just chatting with you throughout the day, that you've changed your opinion on. Usually just because 25 years is a long time. I can't believe I was in second grade I think it's 98 when you went up to Michigan with Pastor Strawcutter. At the time you said that you thought the CIA was kind of a bogus thing. You feel differently now, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew a lot about Donovan and the CIA, and I had my brother-in-law was in the CIA, and I know people who were in the CIA. And, Donovan's wife, Ruth Rumsey's family I knew well in Irvington. The Rumseys are family friends. And I know that people draw salaries in the CIA and so forth, but most of the CIA people I knew who were retired before they were in the CIA, they were in military intelligence, and therefore they were picked up because they were linguists or they had a special knowledge of some geographic place or high-level friends who would be useful. And of course there are different parts of the CIA. There's the plans and policy part of it, and then there's the one that does psychological operations, and they disrupt countries. They do all kinds of naughty things in other countries, which I think is not a good way to win friends and influence people. You get caught.
At the time, I even remember Pastor Strawcutter asked you, had you ever met Madeleine Albright? And as a woman, I think you admired her. But I met you and I just in our chatting that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you kind of believe that she and Condoleezza Rice perhaps possibly both had handlers. Is that?
Oh, definitely. And I think Madeleine Albright having been born not in the United States, and I'm not prejudiced or anything. You mentioned that she was Jewish, Jew, so that was kept quiet, whether she kept it quiet on purpose or her family did. That was interesting to me, that she knew very well a professor who handling of innocent individuals or women when they're young, or men, it occurs a lot. And when one realizes that one is not able to say truth or to speak truth, that is a red flag. That should be a red flag to most patriotic Americans. And that's what concerns me, is that they're basically afraid. I think there's fear. There are fear tactics being used, or something in their past, or maybe something they did in college that was photographed. But truth is light, and light is truth. And none of us is perfect. So I think it behooves all of us to be truthful and not go along with something, not cover things up, and certainly not cover up crimes that other people have done in our name, or supposedly to help us, that we know were done intentionally, which hurt people, and that's bad.
That's very well. And there, I was going through my travels to get here. I was going through your old interviews, and I always learned something new. Like, and perhaps you don't even know the answer. They use plane crashes to off people that they're at, cross with for whatever reason.
Oh, absolutely, all the time.
John Denver, we can't figure out
John Kennedy Jr.
That's right.
Even Clinton, when I was living with Sarah McClendon, and it was his birthday, and we were invited to one of his birthday parties. This is the one in Washington. It was at the Kennedy Warren, and Sarah was invited, and of course I went with her. His 50th birthday, and I have a picture of myself with his cake, because we were going in and out of the White House, and it was so strange. Sarah told me about the plane crashes, and so did my husband, that this was what they did, and there was a plane crash on Clinton's birthday as I think a message. Sarah thought it was a message to him. There were at that time 2 planes that he was flying to another birthday party, I think in California, and one of the 2 planes crashed, and it was his birthday, and I think that was a message to him, because he was siding with not siding with the Palestinians, but he was fair. He wanted to have a meeting with Netanyahu and Arafat, and the other side did not want that. They certainly didn't want Arafat to meet with Clinton, but Clinton decided he was going to meet with Arafat, which he did, and he decided not to meet with Netanyahu, because right before the meeting was to have occurred, they did a really nasty thing in the West Bank. It was to test Clinton. In other words, we're going to do this terrible thing, and it was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but Clinton didn't like that, because right before there was to be a monumental meeting and hopefully a settlement of this ongoing problem, and Clinton didn't like it, so he had Arafat there and didn't have the Israeli president. And after that, Monica Lewinsky was brought up, and they got back at him. They tend to get back at the presidents, and thank goodness it wasn't Kennedy.
Did you during the interview, you gave Clinton the benefit of the doubt, big time. You were very forgiving. You were very Christ-like. You really said that you don't think that he knew about the murders, that he was groomed like your ex-husband as a young man. When did you kind of change your opinion that maybe the Clintons had chosen the wrong path? Because on your words, you didn't always think they were like that.
You're correct. Sarah didn't think they were like that. That's a good question. Clinton was from the South. Hillary was from Wellesley. They went to England together. They were brilliant in their own. And she had been a Republican, working with Nixon and the McCarthy crowd. I believe she loved him, and I believed he loved and respected her. So when I think he began to see, he had a definite weakness. He was a womanizer, and he was brazen about it, because I think it was covered up by the handlers around him, and maybe she knew. I'm sure she knew. They had a child together whom they loved. So and many things happened, like the plane crash, and like Ron Brown's murder and Vince Foster's murder, and he knew who did it. He knew. I heard from Sarah, but I'm not going to say, but I think I know. And certainly he was fearful after the plane crash on his birthday, 50th birthday.
That have been 96?
96.
Okay.
And I think he figured out why and who and that kind of thing. And I don't know, because there were slush funds, there were accounts that many of the politicians and people in the deep state kept in St. Thomas and Nassau. Lots of these military contractors were buying and selling weapons.
Doing wonderful. This is so good.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Have you been enjoying it all right? Yeah? If you would like me to switch up for something else.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything I can get for you?
Sorry we switched on you.
No,
but that's
okay.
okay.
It's part of the job. We gotta hunt people down all the time.
It's wonderful. This is amazing. Maybe a little more water. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
Thank you so
sorry,
much.
It's kind of hard to see.
Oh, that's
with
it?
all these. Everything
We're really fussy, you can tell.
I can tell you how to see that.
We're impromptu. See, I want you, and because I feel like the more casual this is, the more real it'll seem, because that's how Kay's been for 25 years. She was not fussy back then. She had her Kodak camera that she showed Pastor Strawcutter. And she is, but not to interrupt her, but everybody, the woman is who she says she is. What more can you ask for? Yes,
thank goodness.
Yes, still. Unlike Clinton. So they put the fear of God in him. It sounds like that's a big part of it.
I think fear and just big money.
Okay.
And realizing that nobody's gonna go to jail. It's Teflon time, because what happened to Kennedy was just dreadful. What happened?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Some of the other presidents, and of course Clinton realized he could be in a plane, could have been in a plane crash, or get quick cancer or something like that, which the CIA does jobs like that. So I think having the daughter, he and Hillary kind of got together, and she felt it was her time, I guess, to be president, and she had done what she was told, and but they stepped across the line, morally, ethically, legally, every way. But then others have, whom I know about, and I see it's just a nasty road downward, because you need to recognize the line and not cross it.
Very well
or
said.
just bow out and say, hey, this person's done that to me, and walk up to that person's office and say, why did you do this, with your little camera? And or meet them at a cocktail party and say, look, you're not a nice person. You did this, and I know you did this.
You know, and I'm starting to wonder. You know so many of these names that we just have become acquainted with. Like, you've known Robert Mueller for 30, 40 years, but maybe not that long, but certainly, I mean...
No, I knew of him.
He went
to Princeton, and when my husband went to Princeton, and he went to St. Paul's, and he had an Episcopal, one of those perfect marriages, but I won't say what I think, but basically, I believe that he, like my husband and some of the other Princeton boys who were high level, he was certainly high level because of the schooling he had and being very good looking and coming from a nice family. He had a leg up and married a girl. It was kind of a Barbara Bush. It was kind of one of those marriages.
What's her name? What's her first name? His wife's name? I can't think of it.
Barbara. I don't know.
Barbara Mueller? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Barbara. I don't know Mueller's wife. But the point is that he was a rising star. He was a Marine. I know that I'm sure he knew the same Marines in Princeton who recruited my husband. I'm sure they recruited him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe idealistically, because I think he was idealistic in the beginning. But I think I'm glad he's bowed out, and of all the cast of characters, he wasn't the worst.
No.
At all. And I think he tried to be a gentleman as long as he could. But he didn't actually, the report, it hung around a long time before it was written.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we were chatting, the congressional hearing on his report on collusion, I guess 4 years ago during the summer of 2019.
Right.
He's a year younger than Kay. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, Kay Griggs at 79 is sharper than sharp can be.
You're lying.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not lying. Because I got to be honest. You see people like Robert Mueller, who's a year younger, and that was 4 years ago. The lights are on, but nobody's home anymore. I'm not being cruel. That could be dementia. That could be, again, Kay, I don't want to put words in your mouth. That could be, who knows what they've done to him.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
He knows a lot. He might know too much for certain people, particularly a certain person I won't mention.
There's just so many ways we could take this. The first question I asked you when we connected was in the interview when Pastor Strawcutter said, "Oh, but Eisenhower was a good guy." You said, and he's not, again, like Mueller, he's not the worst, but there was. Well, tell us what you know about Eisenhower, because I found that interesting.
Well, I've probably forgotten more than I did know a great deal about him through connections I have and had, some of whom have passed away, through VMI connections, high-level sort of naval connections, World War II connections. But one knows, if one has any savvy at all about Kay Summers being the Rothschilds, and her coming over after she was his driver. She was Catholic, she was from Ireland, and of course she went to a priest, and everything, and they were lovers. She wrote a book about their affair. And I do know for a fact, because a really close friend of mine who went to VMI and was MacArthur's aide in Japan, a very close friend of mine, said that, and knew Marshall very well, that Marshall went to Eisenhower because he wanted to leave Amy And he went to Ike and said, "You're not going to leave your wife."
Poor Cam.
You're not going to leave your wife and go to pay summer students.
Wow. It was that serious.
It was that serious.
Okay.
Absolutely that serious.
Okay.
She came to New Jersey for a while and lived with the family with the Rothschild.
The Rothschilds, that is. Sorry,
Yeah.
because I'm sorry, guys. There's a band playing. We'll move if it gets too loud. But see, that's that. We're just hanging. Okay, so and so.
So he could be handled.
Okay. Was Marshall his handler?
Yes.
Okay.
Marshall was his handler.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I'm not saying Marshall was not patriotic, and I'm not saying that Eisenhower was not patriotic. I think they were. But there were certain individuals like Patton's murder that it was kept quiet. It didn't get to the press. The press at that time was totally under the control of the Pentagon, and therefore, for the benefit of the war effort, things were kept quiet. Like Roosevelt's death, I think was done intentionally.
FDR was done intentionally.
Absolutely.
What was it? I feel so embarrassed, but
Well,
I said polio. But what did they say it was?
No. I mean, I think he did have polio.
True, but he didn't. That didn't kill him.
No, but he was down. He was down in his southern place, and he had one of his lover there, and Morgenthau came down the night before he died, and a Russian woman was with him. All of a sudden, just impromptu, and he ate some caviar that she brought. She was supposedly going to take his picture.
Oh God!
Paint his picture.
It's like out of a
She
novel.
wasn't invited. She wasn't known. Just the lover was down there.
Who was the lover?
Oh dear, I know her name, but I'm
Okay.
slipping me right now. But that he died very suddenly, and the reason I think, and two of my other more well-informed friends think, Morgenthau, it was the end of the war. The war was coming. The end was coming. And Morgenthau and his friends wanted Germany to be totally agrarian. It was called the Morgenthau Plan. And he was very corrupt. He went to a meeting, and I believe he signed something. He signed Roosevelt's name on something.
Forged it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
It was at a meeting in wherever, and Roosevelt found out about it. Found out Morgenthau's, real motive was to totally destroy, all of Germany. In other words, turn them into an agrarian society. And Roosevelt found out about it, and so did Forrestal find out about it. And Forrestal met an untimely death. And it's funny that Morgenthau was the last person to see him alive. And
Forrestal as well.
yeah,
I did not know that.
He sort of jumped out of a window. I don't think he did. His family don't think he did. But he desperately was trying to talk to Truman, and Truman, Forrestal went all the way down to Truman's place in Key West, I think it was.
I've been there. The little White House.
Yeah.
It's charming.
But Forrestal was basically trying to do the right thing. But he also died. And it was the end of the war, and so it was it wasn't an accident, I don't think.
We're going to pause playing, and we'll be right back. So sorry for the interruption. The band was playing. So Kay's about to tell us. So when she lived with the sainted Sarah McClendon, who saved her life, she was connected with some individuals who she wouldn't have probably.
Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You as well. It's a pleasure. Our waitresses, very, very sweet. So she was connected through Sarah McClendon with some figures that you may have heard of. There was a Gunther, help me, what's his name?
Oh yeah,
Russbacher. And then there was Kathy O'Brien of MK Ultra Revelation, who, yes, you spoke with her on the phone at least once.
Yes, I did.
Through Sarah McClendon. So Kathy knew some things. You knew a lot. Now, just because, okay, Kay, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Your take on Watergate is interesting because you do feel that Nixon was sabotaged, but that isn't to say that Nixon has a halo over his head either. Is that correct?
No, but Nixon being his religion, as you know, he's a Quaker in California. But more than that, he was an OSS naval officer during World War II. He was a naval officer.
Right.
And being Quaker, they were very well. Quakers and Mormons are trusted
Agents.
They were in the FBI. So Nixon at that time, and he had a very nice deep voice and so forth. And he worked with the McCarthy crowd, which Hillary Clinton also did during the McCarthy hearings against the Marxists, and there were many, many communists and Marxists active in the United States. And Nixon helped McCarthy to, during those hearings.
Purge or expose.
Yeah, and it wasn't all, McCarthy wasn't all that wrong.
No.
At all. And, the pumpkin papers and all that. And Nixon was chosen, as most people may remember, vice president under Eisenhower, because heretofore the presidents had all been in the Navy. They had served as naval officers, and the Navy did have, I would almost say, primacy, because you didn't want military men to run this country, and of course Ike had been a general and so forth, and he was well liked and popular in the Republican Party. So they, I think, to make the Navy, to make the Pentagon, to make the other forces happy, they chose a man who had been a naval officer to be his vice president. And he had a friendship with Bebe Rebozo,
Which I knew very little. Okay, so friendship.
Which may have been other than just
very close.
Yes.
Was he was born in Cuba, right? Or was he? No.
He was very high level in that part of the world during World War II was vitally important.
The Caribbean?
The Caribbean.
Okay.
And Mexico, of course, and Latin America, and the FBI and the CIA, believe it or not, were interested in changing elections or making elections in Latin America and Central America, Panama, not be Marxist.
Correct. Yeah.
So they interfered. They put up people. They paid people to run. They were not good.
Batista.
Oh, many of them. Yeah. Perón. I mean, there were Panama. It's just legendary. With the British as well. And
have you been there? I feel like you talked about Panama.
I spent my honeymoon in Panama.
That's right. Okay, because I knew you had you mentioned it in some capacity
Yeah.
in the interview. Okay.
And Ramon, of course, before I was there, was murdered in the right racetrack. And of course, during my marriage, some of my husband's associates were very involved with getting rid of Noriega, using loud, booming voices, music, and
Scott, what did Jeff? So Jeff Rentz, who I've not really followed in the last several years, what's he? Because he brought this up to you in 2005. Skull to voice to skull technology, something like that.
oh yeah, definitely. All that is very much still in use, and it's more. It's just more advanced, and we're into the AI, artificial intelligence, and it's going to be very difficult soon to tell the difference between a human being and a video and the real person. And we're, writing articles that are really sound like it might be written by you to get into Yale or whatever, and you did write it. I think the only way to get around that is to have him be written in cursive.
Or
written in your own handwriting. That way, and the mentor that is standing over them, write down what you think, rather than have it sent on by internet or mail, because it can be totally now not really your own.
So you didn't know a whole lot about Gerald Ford, but you have no doubt that Kathy's telling the truth about Gerald Ford. Is that correct?
I think Kathy is telling the truth.
Okay. Because I do have some
but
people that go ahead.
It's easy if you're in any kind of. And he was in the Senate House, Congress Senator, I believe.
Yes, House.
But it was normal for. I don't want to say pretty girls who were pretty secretaries to prostitute. That behavior was normal, and little boys were also part of the recipe there for men. The pages in the Senate.
Would she call him a trisexual because he'd try anything?
I don't know.
That's she coined that term in reference to Ford. She goes, was he a sicko of the worst kind? I don't know. Did he participate in evil? He did, for whatever reason.
But
who knows?
there were others who were worse.
Yes.
And I think he was a football player, so he's not all that. But he was nice looking, and they were looking for nice looking people to run. Puppets. I mean,
Yes.
They had to be nice looking. That was one of the. Intelligence wasn't what really they always looked for. It was how did the person look?
Was Betty abused, just given the alcoholism?
I don't know. I
know.
think she loved him, and I think he did love her. And I don't know.
Weren't they like a different ambiance than what?
Well, they were kind of normal, and I think after they sent Rumsfeld away because he knew everything.
After Watergate, yeah.
He knew everything, and he went to Princeton. He was part of the insider Kissinger in that crowd. So they protected him by sending him to Belgium. And then he came back in the 90s and invented the new NATO, which is now taking over this new world. The new NATO. It went, when I was a senior NATO wife at that time, there were maybe, I think, 12 countries. Now, how many are there?
Oh, didn't they just add the Scandinavian countries the last
Sweden,
6 months?
I think, one of them. But I know a lot about Norway and was over there for NATO conferences and hanging out at Kolfas, which is a base, a secret underground. They have lots of underground bases.
What's the significance? Okay, so there's even some in the New Age community. There's even significance about Norway. What is with that? They talk about these underground. What is the deal?
That's called prepositioning.
Okay.
And that was started by someone I know very well, who's a friend of ours. My husband's a Marine. His first name is Jack. I won't mention his last name. But what is called prepositioning, and the CIA and the NSA, they have these ships, big ships in Newport News, and they take all these weapons. They make so much money selling weapons. They don't want an end to war like I do. I want common sense people to stop it and take that money and try to make people's lives better. But the prepositioning is going on, and they're taking all these weapons systems and they're taking them to Norway. They have huge underground, they're drilling these underground caves and things. I think people know this, but they have a huge machine, I'm sure people know about it, it's huge, it's round, and they can just drill right through rock. And Norway is a great place to deposit these.
You've been there about 20 times?
Well, many times.
Many times. So
I took the mayor of Virginia Beach, and I've been over quite a number of times.
Norway
I
and
love the
Scotland.
Norwegian people because the schools, the children are, by the time they're bilingual, by the time they're in the 5th grade. Perfect English. They write beautifully. And by the time they graduate from high school, they're trilingual. And if they're really, motivated, they might try Mandarin Chinese or Russian. But if not, they may learn Spanish. But the Norwegian people are fabulous. They're great people. They're very nice.
like you.
Well, I don't know. I love them because they're like the Scots. They're just, they're down to earth, and they don't like phony people. They're not big on money and people with money. In fact, they're kind of turned off by it.
Egalitarian.
Yeah, very egalitarian. Women and men are equal. The daddies stay home, and they have the same teacher from the 1st grade, I think, through the 3rd grade. So the children will be nurtured.
Very good.
And the teachers will know them, and the children will feel anchored. They're great outdoors people. They love to go out, and they're just fabulous. They remind me of many of my friends in the old days.
So, Kay has introduced me to a concept that I knew very little about, that one of her academic mentors, because she's so humble, but she got invited to view the Dunmore Papers, in which Lord Dunmore was the last royal governor. He was Scottish, but the last royal governor of Virginia, because she has a bachelor's in Virginia history and a master's in Scottish history, and the Celtic Church. You seem to know a lot about that. And who was
Absolutely.
it? Ian Brown? No, Peter Brown. Ian Cowan. And so,
well, I knew, of course, he was a very good friend, and as was Jeffrey Barrow and Ronald Kant and Stephen Runciman. I was very fortunate, and Nigel Tranter, all Scots and all brilliant. But Ian was a professor of Scottish history who was very knowledgeable about Mary Queen of Scots, and I was very interested in Mary Queen of Scots because I speak French, and
better than her ex-husband, whose thesis was faked. That's neither here nor there. Anyway,
yeah,
go on.
True. And Mary Queen of Scots was born in Scotland, but she lived her early life in France, and she was married to, in fact, she was Queen of France.
Yes.
For a short while, they got rid of him, a guy named Montgomery. It's a long story, but anyway, so she came back to Scotland, and I was very interested in her early life because most of the Scottish historians in Scottish history was written from the male paternalistic, misogynistic point of view, which was normal in that forever, you know. But Antonia Fraser, after I did my research on her early life in France, and I admired her, and her cousin was, of course, Queen Elizabeth I. But it was a rough time to be a king or a queen in that era, because they would, you know, popping off a king was easily done as popping off a president, I suppose, when, you know, with Lincoln, conspiracies do exist.
Did you see there was a film just recently with Margot Robbie played Queen Elizabeth, and I can never say her name, it's Irish. Saoirse Ronan played Mary Queen of Scots, and how they were almost like sisters in their correspondence.
Yeah,
and
they talked about each other. They addressed each other as sister.
Okay, and so interesting, that whole period, and so and into the Celtic Church. So you described it that they were Northern Greeks, the Bogomils, and they went through the Cathars, and well, because you're very, you defended Jefferson in your interviews that he may have not been did he believe in Christ's divinity? What do you think?
Well, the founding forefathers, is Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Patrick Henry, Marshall, the first Chief Justice, they were all Virginians, and they were all Scots. So they were, and they all, during that time, the Declaration of Our Growth was memorized like the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
They memorized the Declaration of Our Growth, which was probably somewhere around the 13th century, the 12th. You know, it was a give me liberty or give me death document. It was a declaration, which in law is a very important thing. And Jefferson was brilliant.
You all right? More? Dry mouth?
Oh, you.
I have one in the car.
Oh.
Yep. See, we're in front. We're casual here.
But Jefferson was so brilliant, and he was also very hospitable. And there was a man by the name of, well, I shouldn't mention him, should I? Uriah P. Levy.
Was he in that era?
Oh, yeah.
So he's long. It's not too soon.
Okay, I can say.
300 years.
He was crooked and a mess, and very unethical, and very connected to France.
Okay.
The wrong people. But Jefferson spent time in France, of course.
Yes.
And so did Franklin and so forth. Jefferson's wife died, and I have my thoughts about his friend.
Who's the friend? The friend being Levi, or
oh, Uriah P. Levy was not his friend.
it's like a nemesis. Okay.
But he wanted Jefferson's papers, and he got them.
After his death.
Very conveniently, and he also got his house.
He owned Monticello?
He most certainly got it.
I didn't know that.
He was
I was
ruthless.
there. I've been there 18 years, since 2005.
Ruthless. And what's interesting to me about Uriah P. Levy is he like, and I shouldn't say this about John Paul Jones, but they were both kicked out of the Navy. They were crooked.
Even back then. Well, perhaps
so they
were
were
more.
kicked out of the Navy.
Wow.
And yet, we have John Paul Jones. He was Scottish. He was from Cookubry, Scotland. He was a adopted, sort of illegitimate child of a laird from Cuckooby, which is very near Dumfries in that part of Scotland. But he came over to Fredericksburg, talking about John Paul. John Paul, his name is John Paul. He changed it to John Paul.
John Paul.
His mother got into trouble because he was kicked out of the. He was kicked out.
Okay.
He did something wrong with the daughter of a very high level person who married somebody else very high level, and he was a bad boy. But he wound up going to France and I think going to Russia. But he was a Peck's bad boy. And he was buried in Paris, I think, and they brought him
That
over.
was rare in that era to go to Russia for Americans, was it not? Or
Well, he was bad. He had to leave the United States.
So you said in the I had never heard this.
Levy was
Yes.
also bad, and Levy was involved with, the Lafitte's and that crowd. He was involved with some really pirates, people who were robbing ships. So Levy was not a good man, but he made some money, and he wound up with Monticello, kept it
Okay.
until the 1800s, I think. But the papers, in other words, Jefferson, to answer your question about whether he was a Christian, he believed that Christ was the most perfect man. He wrote a version of the Gospel. He wrote the Jefferson Bible, which I'm sure you know about. And he was as much of a Christian as some Christians I know.
Sure. Of course.
He was a gentle person, and he was tall. And Stephen Runciman said being tall was the recipe.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you guys enjoy your evening.
I appreciate it.
Being tall, when you're starting a nation, you need a tall guy. Tall guys. Because Stephen Runciman said little people will follow him. He doesn't have to say anything, do anything, but they will automatically think he's tall. Tall is good.
So you brought this up. I must have missed it the first time when I watched your tapes that you believe that Jefferson was assassinated, but I couldn't quite figure out for what reason.
Well, he and Madison, died on the same day.
Fourth of July. That's
It
big
was
folklore.
signature. It was what they call 4th of July.
Like, astrological, their souls.
We get it.
Yeah. Well, that gets spun as this like really messianic. Oh, America.
Oh, it's totally.
That's not how life
Masonic.
works. Yeah.
No, it's totally Masonic.
Okay. Was that just their
And
send-off?
Levy,
Or?
I believe, was a Mason, and I could go into stuff about the Virginia Freemasons. I know quite a lot about them, but the Masons at that time were just getting started, and Virginia was a Christian state. It was Episcopal, it was Anglican, it was English, and then when the war occurred and we won, quote unquote,